We make promises all the time. I'll pay you back. I'll get that project done by Friday. But have you ever really stopped to think about what separates one of those casual promises from one that could actually, land you in court? Well, today we're diving into that exact journey, how a simple promise transforms into a legally binding contract.
So let's think about this. All those little agreements you make every single day. I'll call you later. I'll cover lunch. On the surface, they kind of sound the same. But in the eyes of the law, they can be worlds apart. So what is that crucial line? What turns a casual comment into a pact that the law will actually enforce?
All right, just look at these two promises. One feels really casual, right? It's a friendly gesture. The other, well, that feels like a serious transaction, and that feeling is pretty much the key. The law separates these based on the journey they take, and that whole journey really starts with the intention behind the promise.
Okay, so what's the very first test our simple agreement has to pass to even begin this transformation? It has to be serious. This is all about the intention, the real meaning behind the words.
This is the first hurdle, and honestly, it's a pretty big one. As a general rule, the law just doesn't want to get involved in promises made between family or friends in a social setting. It kind of assumes these promises are based on trust and affection, not, legal rules and regulations.
And this right here, it just lays it all out perfectly. Promising your kids some pocket money is seen as a family matter. It's about love, not law. But offering to sell a car for a specific price, that's a business deal. The intent to create a real, legally binding agreement is totally obvious.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Even if you have that legal intent, there's another crucial piece to the puzzle. Both people have to be on the exact same page, mentally. There's a fancy Latin term for this, consensus ad idem. So imagine this scenario. A seller has two cars, an ambassador and a Fiat. He says, "I'll sell you my car." The buyer agrees, but he's picturing himself driving that Fiat. The seller, he was thinking of the ambassador the whole time. See the problem? There's no meeting of minds here. The agreement fails the test, and boom, no contract. All right, let's keep building on this. A contract isn't just about what you intend or what you agree on. It's also got to be about fairness and a clear exchange of value.
Okay, so every single valid contract needs this thing, a legal term called consideration. Sounds fancy, right? But the idea is actually super simple. It's just what each side is giving and getting. It's the price you pay for the other person's promise.
Yeah, this really gets to the heart of it. A one-sided promise where only one person is giving something up? Well, in the eyes of the law, that's usually just a gift. For an agreement to be enforceable, it has to be a two-way street, a real exchange.
But wait a minute, does that something of value always have to be cold, hard cash? I mean, that's what we usually think of, right? This is a really common misconception, but the law is actually way more flexible on this point.
Honestly, consideration is incredibly flexible. It can be money, sure, or an object, but it can also be an action, like performing a service. It can even be as simple as a promise in exchange for another promise. The only really hard rules are that it has to be real. You can't promise something imaginary. And, of course, it has to be legal.
But it's not just about what's being exchanged. How you got to that agreement is absolutely critical. The law demands that both parties walked into that deal willingly, without any funny business, no improper pressure, no deception.
And if consent is messed with in any of these 5 ways, we're talking threats, someone abusing a power dynamic, straight-up lies, false statements, or even a major mistake about a core fact, then the agreement is not enforceable. Free and genuine consent is a total deal breaker. Okay, we're in the home stretch. Our little agreement has jumped through a lot of hoops: intent, exchange, consent. Now for the final stage, the last boss level. It has to pass a series of legal checks to make sure it plays by the rules of society. These are the absolute non-negotiables. The people making the deal have to be legally capable of doing so. The whole point of the agreement has to be legal. I mean, you can't have a valid contract to do something illegal, right? And finally, it can't be a type of agreement that the law has already put on a blacklist.
And this brings up a really practical point you need to remember. While a handshake deal can be a valid contract, some types of agreements legally must be in writing, like buying or selling a house, for example. The big takeaway here is to always check if the specific kind of deal you're making has any of these formal requirements.
So where does that leave us? We've put our simple agreement through the ringer, right? We've checked its intent, its fairness, its consent, and its legality. So what's the final result of this whole journey?
By nailing every single one of those tests, from showing real legal intent and having that meeting of the minds, to including fair consideration, genuine consent, and meeting all the legal standards, our agreement has transformed. It's leveled up. It's become something much, much more powerful, a contract.
And this classic legal saying, it just nails the whole thing. Think of agreements as this giant universe of promises we make. But within that universe, there's this elite group that has passed all the tests to become something special. Contracts. A contract is basically an agreement that has earned its legal superpowers.
So I want you to really think about this for a second. What about in your life? That freelance gig you took on, your apartment lease, even just clicking "I agree" to the terms and conditions when you buy something online. These are way more than just promises. They're packed with real legal weight. And understanding that difference, that's not just some academic exercise, it's a critical life skill.